Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, June 24th. I would now like to call this meeting to order, and as is our practice, we will start with the land acknowledgement. The Niagara region and the town of Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest this evening from the members? I see no hands raised. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. And before I ask for a mover and seconder, I would like to amend the order. There's been a request to amend the order. We have representatives this evening with us from our audit firm KPMG, as well as from the Fire Marquee Company. And so we would just like to address those two issues first before we move to the rest of the agenda, and give our guests an opportunity to go first on our agenda this evening. So if any committee member, if everyone is okay with that, then if I could have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda in the new order. And that would be Councillor Vardy and Councillor Howe, who has seconded that. So resolved that the agenda for the July 24th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting be approved as amended. By show of hands, all those in favor, please. And that is carried. Thank you. I think we'll just deal with the receipt of the previous minutes first, and then we will move into the delegations and those reports. So could I have a mover and seconder to receive the previous meeting minutes of the Finance Committee and the GDAC Committee? That's been moved by Councillor Kurstanji and seconded by Member Thompson. Thank you. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And that is carried. Thank you. So at this point in time, and I'll just ask our clerk, which one would you like me to start?
Our financial statements.
Okay. So sorry, you're going to live through probably a rather long presentation with some questions, but this evening we have our report, and I'm so sorry, let me just open up I just lost my, my screen here. So at this point in time, we're going to deal with item 8.7 on the agenda, which is Finance Report 25-40 and the Consolidated Financial Statement Report. Mr. Delmonico, do you want to lead us off, and then we'll ask the auditors to join the presentation at that point in time? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Actually, we'll have, we have Paul on the line. We can have Paul walk us through the audit findings report and the statements.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tony. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Perfect. And do I have the ability to share? Yes. See a nod. Okay. Let me know if everyone can see the findings report.
We can see it on the screen. Proceed.
Perfect. Thank you through the chair. Thank you everyone for having me. My name is Paul Siapana. I'm an audit partner with KPMG, filling in for, obviously I'm not Carlos, filling in for Carlos. Carlos is unfortunately away on vacation. Dan was going to join the meeting, but he was just notified of a death in the family. So I told him he didn't have to attend the meeting today. So you have me today to kind of go through the audit findings report, and hopefully I can help address some questions if you have on the financial statements themselves. So with that, going through the findings report, I'll start with the audit highlights. So as of today's date, we're in a position to issue the statements in final, obviously subject to final approval and receipt of the management representation letters that are signed. At that point, we'll be able to issue the statements in final. There have been no significant changes than what would have been presented by Carlos and team a few months ago before the audit began. From a significant risk perspective, we're commenting on the one significant risk that we've highlighted for the purpose of this audit, which is management override of controls. There's a second significant risk that's required by the Canadian auditing standards, but we're able to rebut those risks. So we've rebutted the risk of revenue recognition, but have kept the management override of controls. That we've noted some other risks of material misstatement items, some areas that we've carried out testing over. From a going concern perspective, there's no matters to note there. There's no significant unusual transactions. From an accounting policies and practices perspective, there were 3 new accounting policies that were adopted this year. You'll note in the notes to the financial statement, there was no material impact as a result of the adoption of those new standards, which is great considering the last couple of years have been pretty heavy in terms of ARO and some other standards. Some other financial reporting matters that we noted in specific topics. Very clean audit for this year. There were no uncorrected misstatements, no corrected misstatements, or no significant deficiencies to note to council. And we've also included a slide on our independence, and I can verify that as of the audit report date, we have maintained our independence and we'll continue to do so until the audit report is released. So looking at the status, as mentioned, we've finished up all of our final completion procedures. Now we're just got to complete discussions with council, obtain approval, and obtain those signed management representation letters. As I mentioned earlier, there were no significant changes to the plan, which includes materiality, involvement of others. There are component audits that get consolidated into these financial statements, so no changes from those components as they reported up to the group for consolidation. From a management risk arising from management override of controls, this is very judgment-based. We carry out a set amount of procedures. They are not dollar-oriented, so it's more of a fraud risk perspective that we're testing. We did not identify any evidence that would indicate any fraudulent activity or areas to be of concern from management biases perspective. We note here that I mentioned we rebutted revenue recognition. Just because we rebutted it doesn't mean we didn't test it. We just don't consider it a significant risk, but we do consider it a significant area. So we do carry out substantive procedures over that revenue. It's just most of the revenue is non-complex and pretty easy to tie out from a third-party evidence perspective. Some other areas that we focused were tangible capital assets, where we vouched to underlying support, making sure the classification was correct, the depreciation is correct. This includes additional testing on the asset retirement obligation. So for this, we obtain an update from management and then revise any numbers as needed if there are any significant changes. So we have no matters to note there. We've also included operating expenses, including employee future benefits. We carried out substantive testing over the operating expenses. And for post-employee benefits, there are 2 pieces, the WSIB liability, but also the actuarial valuation that comes into play. We have an actuarial team that looks at the assumptions and compares them against what your actuary had presented and determined. We did not identify any differences that would cause a material misstatement as a result of those assumptions. Accounting policies and practices. So as I mentioned, there were 3 new accounting policies relating to revenue, purchased intangibles, and P3s, so public-private partnerships. Going through these new adoptions, it's noted here that disclosure has been improved in the financial statements, but there hasn't been a significant impact in terms of the numbers relating to the adoption of those new policies. And then some specific topics. So here we highlight some areas to bring to your attention. If there were any illegal acts, any issues with management, any difficulties or disagreements, it would all be noted here. As you can see, there are no matters to report. As I mentioned earlier, there's been no control deficiencies. And the last slide that I wanted to go through was our independence slide, where, as I mentioned, we verify that we maintained our independence throughout the duration of the audit. So before I go into the actual financial statements, opening it up for any questions on our actual findings report.
To the committee members, do you have any questions on what has been presented so far? If I may ask a few questions then on behalf of the committee. You've explained the much of your audit process, but this was also the first time you were conducting an audit of our town as your client for the consolidated financial statements. Could you just walk us through what you did to ensure that you were satisfied with the opening numbers?
For sure. So I was obviously not involved in it, but our typical process and how we review the opening numbers, we'll connect with the predecessor auditor and we'll conduct a file review. So when we do a file review, it's a common courtesy for the predecessor auditor to basically show us the entire file, any adjustments, any control deficiencies, their audit approach to various significant financial captions. And then what we would do is we would compare that to our methodology. So in some cases, we would have to top up testing, or if the materiality was slightly different than the materiality we would select, we would have to adjust our testing approach. From what I reviewed in the file, and I reviewed most of the planning and completion prior to this meeting, there were no top up or additional changes that had to be made to those opening balances. If there was anything and anything that was material, we would have a restatement column in the prior year and note that in our financial statements. All that we've indicated in our audit report is from a comparative information perspective, is that the prior period audited results were audited by a different firm.
And would you be privy to what the materiality of the previous audit would have been in comparison to yours? Would you say that was very comparable, or I'll say the differences were not significant?
I would say our materiality to theirs was comparable. Where we did note some differences is on the component materiality. But at the end of the day, standalone audits are completed at the component level, which have a much lower materiality than what we would require from a component perspective. So long story short, no issues with materiality.
Very good, thank you.
No problem.
You've answered some of the questions that I had written down in advance. You've talked to us about change in accounting policies, and basically the new ones that were implemented would appear that the dollar impact was immaterial or insignificant. Would that be a correct statement to make?
That's fair. We're actually not seeing, from a municipal standpoint, we're not seeing much of an impact of these three new standards. Just based on the revenue that comes in, the different partnerships that come, they're very few and far between. So we're not actually seeing, if you were to look at other financial statements for other municipalities, you'll see a similar note disclosure.
Thank you. Would you be able to answer this? Is our municipality compliant with all relevant rules and laws and regulations that you would have encountered in the course of the audit?
So from an inquiry perspective, this is something that we're required to ask management. Through our testing, we would have noted it here. I think it was in the specific topics. If there were any issues that we identified that was not brought to our attention, but we did not identify anything from a compliance perspective.
That's great, thank you. And I think you did allude to it, but I guess I would just like you to make a more broad statement. Any difficulties encountered during the audit?
From what I've discussed with Dan and team, it was actually a pretty smooth audit for a first year under our belt, considering. So it sounds like everything was pretty clean. I know I came in and I was reviewing the financial statements. I provided comments, and it was a great working relationship between us and management.
Great, we love to hear that, and thank you to our staff too for that. In your audit findings letters that you've shared with us, you talk about new and upcoming auditing standards. And the one that in particular that caught my eye is the one that talks about communication with those charged with governance. I believe it was on page 22. Right there, at the bottom to the left side, the box in the bottom left-hand corner. Could you just expand upon that for us and what is coming?
So this would have already been effective. So it was effective as December 15th, 2024. This is an ISA standard, so it's an international standard. The CAS standard, it's already been implemented and is already part of our inquiry questions that we would have with management and would have been in our audit planning report.
Oh, pardon me. I thought the bar above it said it was effective for periods beginning on or after December 15th, 2024. But if you feel it was implemented already, could you just expand upon what that specific change is to the standards?
So from the communications with those charged with governance, there's from what we've articulated, there's really not much more than I'm trying to think of a good example to share with you. So typically we're required to report any additional work that we would have been engaged for. Let's say we had findings as a result of an advisory project or something like that. We would be required to communicate to those charged with governance, any obviously independence matters that would arise, but it's more specific questions as opposed to something new or an additional deliverable that we'd have to report to you.
Okay, thank you. And then I would say just my last question as we're talking about standards and reporting and internal controls and so on. Do you have any suggestions, or did you come upon anything that we could do to improve our reporting and our controls?
That's a great question. I would say we usually issue what's called a management letter point. If we do identify areas, improvement areas that can be implemented by management. There wasn't one for this year in the file when I reviewed it. That being said, it is a new file, so we're obviously still learning it. We do not complete a controls-based approach for this audit. It is purely substantive. So when it comes to significant control deficiencies, we don't usually identify them unless they come up somehow during our process analysis or reviewing different financial statement caption processes by management.
Two questions related to that. It's my understanding that you still need to document the internal controls that we have. So although you're not testing it, you are documenting them. So I'm hoping, and I guess the answer maybe, and I hate to put words in your mouth, but the good answer is it sounds like you're saying you didn't see anything that leaped out at you, even though you didn't have to test the internal controls because you took a substantive approach. So at the risk of putting words in your mouth, would that be a correct assumption that we could make?
So we don't test operating effectiveness of controls. We test design and implementation of controls for significant financial captions. So let's say you had tangible capital assets or revenue or cash. Those are all significant captions where what we would do is understand the process. We would do a walkthrough of that process, understand the controls in place, and then we test one. So we do a design and implementation of that process and of those controls. If we were to test controls from a test of operating perspective, we would do a sample over the year and we would test multiple touch points. So based on our file work and the design and implementation test, we did not identify anything.
Thank you. This evening we're here, and of course the real purpose of this evening and the major report that we're going to be focusing on is our consolidated financial statements, but your firm also did audit and review work on a number of the smaller entities, namely the library, the Downtown Business Improvement Association, the Art Gallery, and so on. Is there anything you would wish to highlight for us that has to do with those other smaller reports? I'll call them smaller entities.
For sure. I would take note to the auditor's reports. While there was no qualification in the consolidated statements, you will notice in some of the smaller ones there are qualifications, but those qualifications are consistent year over year. They mainly relate to the completeness of donations. I think that related to the library, from if I recall correctly. Otherwise, no matters to note on those.
And your audit findings report and the report that we have here in front of this evening, would that include comments you might have had on any of those entities? Or because we are the committee that is charged with all these financial matters, even though they may have approved them already, would any findings you had related to them be part of this letter, or would that be separate documents?
All except for the hydro.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That concludes all my questions that I wanted to ask at this time. Member Demare, go ahead.
There we are, red light. Okay, so questions. You said it was a very clean or easy audit since you're coming in to replace the previous auditors, which is great that you had a fairly good time of it. The question I have, I'm looking at your presentation.
As good as we could from an audit perspective.
Sure. So I indicate on your presentation, just a couple slides below the one shown there, that there was KPMG Clara Generative AI. So was this used on the audit?
The generative AI we would not have used on this audit specifically. We usually need multiple years in order to upload into the tool.
So that means next year you would have an opportunity to use that?
We would if we felt that it was applicable, but we've used it on a majority of our municipalities already.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. So did you find any good value in that as far as productivity?
It's quite impressive from an audit quality perspective. So we're able to test 100% of a population as opposed to just a sample basis. Essentially what the tools does is it pulls a bunch of transactions, it runs an algorithm over the entire GL for a specific financial statement caption, and identifies any low risk, medium risk, or high risk entries. So ones that they typically wouldn't see for that specific business process. And then we would test any of the high risk. And from a medium risk perspective, we would use judgment to see what's actually in there and then test accordingly. So it's a pretty cool tool, but it's only right now for the income statement, so revenues and expenses. We don't have anything for the balance sheet side.
Okay, so it's not a big reduction in your cost for that?
No, it's the quality perspective that we're getting comfort over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from any other committee members at this time? Then I think we will turn it back over to you, Paul, to continue. Are you going to walk us through the financial statements, or will that be our treasurer?
So I was talking to Tony earlier about going through the financial statements. I did note, though, in the meeting agenda, there is quite a good summary on the main changes in the financial results year over year. Maybe if you just wanted me to go through the auditor's report, just to showcase maybe what those differences were. But everything that I was going to say is actually included in that summary. So
Okay, go ahead.
okay, sorry, gotta scroll all the way up. Apologies. Let's Gracie Power. A lot of financial statements.
So for all those watching, we are actually in Appendix A, I believe.
Okay, so now we're at the corporation.
Are you going to the 5-year review? Is that what you're?
I'm going to go to our auditor's report.
Okay.
So it would be page 77 of 289 for the package.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So what I'll note here is the independent auditor's report. So this is really what we provide to the consolidated audit. You'll notice that there's a clean opinion. If it wasn't a clean opinion, it would have qualified next to opinion. What I wanted to note was just that other matter comparative information paragraph on the second page, which goes through the fact that the point that I made earlier, where the prior year's numbers were audited by another auditor who expressed an opinion on those on October 7th, 2024, a qualified opinion.
Thank you. Then if it will be our staff who will be walking us through our financial statements, I would just like to take the opportunity to ask you two more questions. Given your firm's experience with other municipalities as well, my question to you is, how would you assess our financial health of our municipality compared to others?
Compared to others? That's it's a tough question in today's market and environment. As you know, anything can change. From what I noticed in the financial statements, let me just go back to them. Yeah, so from a financial health perspective, I think the right investments are being made, especially for this year. The big change from last year to this year is that portfolio investments going up by 20 million as there was excess cash on hand. The one piece to maybe always look at is your liability side of the house. And if there's anything there uncertain that could come about, obviously with, I think, the hospital and some other areas, pulling some additional debt always creates some issues. But it looks like from a current ratio, everything it looks quite good overall.
And related to that, I guess, is the question, which kind of goes hand in hand with my first one, about asking you your opinion on our cash flow and our reserve and reserve fund balances.
So a lot healthier, I would say, than some municipalities that I've worked on at the end of the day. I think it's just a difference in infrastructure. There are some municipalities with a significantly old infrastructure that those asset management plans did not come into effect until too late in the process. And now a lot of municipalities are scrambling to kind of come up with the reserve funds in order to replace or update some of that older infrastructure. But for here, I don't really see that for the town.
Have you had an opportunity or your staff to actually familiarize yourself with our asset management work to date?
We have not. We have not been engaged to do any work on that.
Thank you. Any further questions by committee members? Then I guess that wraps up your portion of the presentation. So thank you very much for coming out this evening and walking us through that. And at this point in time, the resolution that we will have so far is to receive the presentation from Mr. Paul Chiapana from KPMG. So if I could have a mover and seconder to that effect. Councillor Vardy has so moved and Member Demare has seconded. So resolved that the presentation from Mr. Paul Chiapana of KPMG be received for information. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And that is carried. Thank you very much, Paul, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.
Then at this point in time, would you like to take it from there, Mr. Delmonico?
Yeah, sure. If I could start with the consolidated financial statements. You'll see, like Paul mentioned, there was a shift in cash to portfolio investments as of the end of the year. So we do earn cash, interest on cash in the bank, but those rates have been declining the past couple of years. So it's important that we put those funds to good use in interest-bearing investments. And you'll see that reflected there, that shift. The taxes receivable as of the end of the year did see an uptick, but when you look at the 5-year summary, you can see that we're at about average levels over the past 5 years. 2023 looked like it was kind of the lowest of those 5 years, so that's encouraging. Other receivables did see a big increase related to grants receivable from the province. That's related to the PKC expansion project and accounts for that. And the value of the government business enterprise has increased slightly to 19.6 million. On the liability side of things, the estimated liability for employee benefit obligations has increased by $1 million due to estimated increase in WSIB liabilities based on the updated actuarial valuation that we received from our actuary. The long-term debt has increased to 8.6 million. That's reflective of the issuance of 7.4 million in new debt for the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital project. Over onto the statement of operations, you'll see that our revenues, the government transfers increase of 5 million relates to grant revenues recognized on the PKC project. Other revenues, the decrease relates to recognition of parkland dedication reserves. So funds are recognized as revenue not when collected, but when incurred in relation to a project. And in 2023, there was more activity that used parkland dedication funding than in 2024.
Would you like us to ask questions as we go along or wait till the end?
I'm almost done. So
Okay, then we will hold the questions for sure. I just didn't know how much further and in depth you wanted to go, and I didn't want anybody to forget their question.
Okay.
Continue.
Regarding expenses, the general government expenses, there was an increase. 1 million of that is related to the employee benefits obligation liability, which I mentioned earlier, increased by $1 million. So you're seeing the expense come through on that line. Another 440,000 is related to increased legal expenses in 2024 compared to 2023. And staffing in 2024 was at higher capacity than in 2023, which contributed another 650,000. In terms of protection expenses, that was up 700,000, primarily related to WSIB expenses incurred for firefighters. And transportation expenses was up 1 million due to a combination of operating project expenses and wage increases compared to the previous year, but these increased expenses have remained within budget. And then lastly, on the year-end reserve transfers, Appendix D provides details on the changes in reserve impacts. As the financial statements were compiled for audit, some adjustments were made to ensure the accuracy of reported figures. As a result, the year-end operating deficit was reduced by 109,000. And as mentioned, that is outlined in Appendix D. You can see the line-by-line changes there. So if there's any questions at this point.
Before we take any questions, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least have a mover and seconder to put your report on the table, on the floor for discussion. If I could ask someone to move and second that. Councillor Howe and Councillor Vardy has seconded that. So now I'll open up the floor for any questions. Councillor Howe.
Through you, Chair. Director, the 7 million for West Lincoln, now that the substantial completion has been pushed back, well, we haven't turned that monies over to them yet, have we? Or have we?
Yeah, no, we have. They were expecting substantial completion, and per the agreement, we had to release the funds a month before the expected substantial completion. So those funds have been released.
Any other questions? Then I would like to say that I really appreciated the additional detail and explanations. Every year, I think we're just kind of expanding it a little bit more as we can. So thank you to the staff for doing that, especially the 5-year summary. I really find things like that to be immensely helpful, and I see some of my other committee members nodding their head too. So thank you very much for putting the time and effort into being able to show that. One of the things that would especially like to point out, and let me make sure, I'm on page, I'm going to say, it has to do with the 5-year review. I'm going to say, in the PDF, I'm on page 5, I guess, the 5-year review, and it starts with revenue and taxation. There's a couple different charts that kind of break out the lower tier portion of the taxation, and I find the 5-year result to be so interesting. This year, our share of taxation, 21.8 million, but last year, 21.7 million. And the year before, 22.2 million. And I realize we've made a few changes in that time period too, where we've been making some changes to how we fund wastewater, moving that on to a more user fee base and so on. But really what I'm seeing in that 5-year trend is we're very, very close to, 21 million basically every single year. Even 2020, where we start in the 5-year review, $20.8 million. And so the reason I think that's important is because, sometimes we get questions from our residents about and comments that they feel the taxes are really going up. And I'm sure our staff bears those phone calls and emails and questions even more than we do sometimes. But the proof is here in the numbers that really they, with some change in how we were levying and changing how we're levying user fees for wastewater, really we are very, very consistent in terms of where our levy has been. And then if you look at these charts at the same time period and you look at the change in population, the population has been going up, but our levy, I don't think, is going up nearly by the same change in population. So I think it's just important to understand what the numbers are telling us and put in that perspective as well. Councillor Vardy, go ahead.
Just because I've received a lot of comments, inquiries about taxes, I think a big issue is how much the region is requiring. And, because the bottom line, people are paying more money. They're not paying much more Grimsby money, but they're paying a heck of a lot more regional money. And I think we really need to find a way, and I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we have 2 votes on regional council, but when they come with a 9-point-something increase, tax increase, and we can't say what we're getting for it. There's, 33 new policemen hired, none of whom are coming to Grimsby. So, and when I did inquire about that, I was told those 33 were just replacements for officers on sick leave and vacation and what have you. So there's no gain at all. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think we really have to find a way to make sure that we're getting our fair share of what we're paying into the region. So, while I appreciate that, we've been pretty good at keeping it fairly steady, the region hasn't, and they have a bigger percentage of the tax bill, and people are having to pay, quite a bit more every month because of that. So if you've got an answer for that, I'd love to hear it.
I don't have an answer for that, but I will direct you to page 6 of that particular report. And I'm talking about page 6 when you open up the PDF. I don't know if the pages themselves are paginated, because I now have mine so enlarged so that I can see it from where I'm sitting, that I can't necessarily tell you. I guess it is page 6 as well in the actual document numbering too. And it's really the top of the page that I found as interesting as the previous page when we talk about taxation from real property. And you can see for 2024, that was $73.5 million. But then when we start backing out, the taxes collected on behalf of the Niagara region and the school boards to get down to our share, That's the 21.7, almost 21.8 that I was referring to earlier. But you can now see the line here where it tracks the taxes collected on behalf of the Niagara region to carry on from Councillor Vardy's comment, 41.865 million. The previous year, 38.887 million. So, you know, you can actually see that 5-year trend and some big changes in how much is levied for the region. Any other questions or comments for the staff or otherwise about this particular report? Then, at this point in time, we already had a mover and a seconder, but the motion is resolved that Finance Report 25-40, the Consolidated Financial Statement Report dated July 24th, 2025, be received for information, and that the Finance Committee recommends that Council approve the 2024 financial report, which is attached as Appendix A to this agenda. So we've had a mover and seconder by a show of hands. All those in favor of the resolution? And that is carried. Thank you. Because we've moved things in order a bit, pardon me, while I read from the clerk's laptop instead. So at this point in time, we're going to have a presentation from Mr. Chris Carrier of the Fire Marquee Agency, and I will give the floor to you, Mr. Carrier.
Good evening, members of committee. It's a pleasure to be here. As a former mayor of the town of Collingwood, I love sitting through financial statements, audited financial statements, and I just got back from Western Canada, so it was fun going out there to see how they run their meetings. You're doing a wonderful job, Chair. Firemark began its operations 15 years ago now. Our founders of our company were a number of retired and semi-retired insurance adjusters, the top 3 at the time, had over 110 years of senior claims manager experiences. The 3 right now operating in Ontario bring over 100 years worth of adjusting experience to the table with Royal Insurance, with Gore Mutual, and with Frank Cowan, now Intact Public Entities. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. That's cool. What we've done with the program is that they became aware of fire department coverages actually on a file in Texas. They were being submitted in that state with a catastrophic loss, and they started looking before their retirement whether or not the policy coverage existed in Canada as well. So almost all property insurance policies in Canada under the additional coverages section have what they call fire department expenses. When I started in 2011, there was 234 companies. Now there's about 196 companies. So the languages and the coverages vary, but the fire department coverage does exist in almost all property insurance policies. Next slide, please. Some of the companies, if you ask, will increase the coverages. So they do vary. You'll see $1,000, $3,000, $5,000. Cooperators, as an example, is $5,000 fire department expense coverage. My home in Collingwood, Ontario is insured with Aviva. It's actually unlimited fire department coverage as well. So we're talking residential, non-residential, industrial, institutional, boats, trains, planes are all covered. Anything to do with a property policy may have coverage. Next slide, please. The Insurance Bureau of Canada, which is the recognized trade organization for all insurers operating in Canada, they publish what they call an annual fact book, and they publish that for public education out there on the insurance industry. And you'll see that they want the public to understand how you establish a premium cost. And so the premium costs, yes, they're measuring risk. They're sharing the risk amongst all of their portfolio holders. However, the premium is designed to cover expected claim costs. So as the Finance Committee, it's very similar to your municipal budget process. Your budget process is your best professional expertise put forward as to what the costs of operations are going to be, and then you work through the mill rate and you end up with your tax levy. Same with the premiums. They're estimating what they should be paying out, but they're also covering operating expenses and expected profits. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Just one more, and one more, and one more. This was a report from the City of Thunder Bay. So we have large urban, small urban, rural, we have local service boards, and we have one First Nations community in the province of Ontario. We have over a third of Ontario's departments as clients. But the City of Thunder Bay was very thorough in their research before they became a client. They actually reached out to 10 other of our clients and said, has there been any increase in premiums that you've noticed in your community? And the answer has come back, no, of course not. And so there's a lot of information out there with over a third of Ontario's departments that can be provided, and I have been answering a number of questions from your staff and providing as much information as I can, as they've asked for, to illustrate to you that there's no risk to premium increases to your stakeholders. And so we'll just move on to the next slide, please. This was a small mutual in Eastern Ontario. You can see here that they had $18.8 million in premium income coming in. They had direct losses of $10.7 million that they paid out on claims. They had 2 claims in one community and 1 claim in another community. They only had $1,000 worth of fire department coverage, which much appreciated, but that only represented 0.028 of 1% of the total cost. Next slide. And once more. The superintendent of insurance did illustrate and highlighted that there was 26,359 direct written premiums for this company. So it represented 11 cents a policy. So when we're talking about the fire department coverage and what the insurance industry is paying out on claims in an annual year, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the overall claim process. The one other thing I want to illustrate is that the industry is under pressure, like so are you with your budgets, facing supply chain issues and inflationary issues. So the cost to replace the home, the cost to replace the assets is more expensive today than it was a month ago. It will be more expensive 6 months from now and a year from now. Using cooperators as an example, in 2014, the fire department coverage was $5,000. In 2025, it's $5,000. In 2030, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's $5,000. It's a fixed cost, not a variable cost. There's no inflationary pressure on that line item, and the Insurance Bureau of Canada's own language said that they've already forecasted what they should be paying out on that. They've already charged that and calculated that into their premium. Next slide, please. The program kicks in after a call out. There's 13 insured perils. The structure fire is the most obvious one. Next slide, please. Your fire department already does what they call a standard incident report. That is what we would like a copy of that information. The scene release form, if the fire service doesn't do it, is something that we provide free to our clients. And then an initial report form, which is a summary. That information is sent to us. Box 2 is really the work that we do. So we have a file of policy wordings that we review. If it's cooperators, we'll know who the likely adjuster is for that claim. We'll reach out to that adjuster and say, is so-and-so, has Mr. and Mrs. Smith made a claim against their policy? If the answer is yes, we piggyback on that claims process. If the answer is no, it's a small incident loss, then we close the file and return it to our client. The average recovery is 14 weeks. The shortest recovery has been 8 days, and the longest recovery has been 42 months. So the 42-month was a non-residential fire. There was a basket of coverages in this policy. And so what we wanted to ensure was that the policyholder received all of the funds that they were entitled to before we accessed the fire department coverage, and we were still able to recover for our client in excess of $30,000. In box 3, you receive 70% of the funds recovered. We receive 30% of the funds that are recovered. There's no annual, there's no minimum. The only time our company receives compensation is if you receive compensation. Next slide, please. Fire department funds that are recovered stay within the fire service budget, as you're probably aware, through the Treasury Department. 1998 and 2005, the Supreme Court of Canada deemed the difference between a tax and a fee. A tax, general taxation or property taxation, you can levy it against all of your various budget line items, where a fee is for a product or a service provided by a specific department. So the money stays within that department. Otherwise, it's deemed to be an indirect tax, and you run afoul of the regulations and the law on that. The money can be used in 3 broad categories: training, public ed campaigns, and capital purchases. If we go back to Thunder Bay, City of Thunder Bay for a moment, the City of Thunder Bay in 2019 was supposed to purchase a pumper rescue truck. They did not. They delayed the purchase until 2024. They went out in 2024, February, I believe, or March 2024. It came back $438,000 higher than the 2019 price post-COVID. And instead of using more reserve money or more tax dollars or whatever, they were able to make up the shortfall from the funds that they had recovered from our program. So that $438,000 they had saved up, and they were able to execute it towards the purchase of that fire service. Next slide, please. Property owners do pay taxes. I've just heard you commenting about that. They do pay a significant portion of taxes everywhere. However, most property insurers also pay premiums to their insured or to their insurer, and we are grateful for that. The coverage is there, and we're asking for the insurance industry to honor the coverage that their policyholders have paid for, essentially. Next slide, please. The next steps, if you're in agreement with the program, and your neighbor, Lincoln, has been on the program a long time, and either OSIM or AMO, the mayor of Lincoln brought over your mayor to introduce her to us and talk about the check that she had just received, actually from me that day. Anyways, we're asking after consideration, and if council, the committee recommends to council for approval, then a standalone cost recovery bylaw or amending your consolidated fee bylaw. The standalone bylaw was drafted by Templeman Law, Jennifer Savini, partner. She's a frequent guest speaker at AMCTO and other municipal conferences. And then approve our agency agreement, which your staff has already seen a draft of. That agency agreement has been reviewed by 150, 160 different solicitors, and everybody seems to add comments, and that's terrific. We review them, and when they're improved and better, we adopt them and move on. And that is it in a nutshell for our process. Next slide. That is Mickey. That's our mascot, trademarked as well. The president of our company, when he worked for Royal Insurance in Calgary, used to volunteer with the Deaf Association, and he would take his golden retriever and teach the kids how to do hand signs to train their dogs. And they gave him Mickey when Mickey was a puppy, born deaf. So the kids, Ted and Duckett, trained Mickey, and when he passed away when he was 12 and a half, he knew 24 hand signs. And it's a little exploitative with the fire service, but it's a nice little story that we like to share. And it is on our website as well. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or concerns or comments.
Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Member Demare.
I'm going to bring some questions to it because I was in the insurance business for years. So I just got some questions for you about this facility. There's always been a criticism about it that it's a double tax because, you know, when you pay for your household insurance, the tax goes to the government. Ontario or different provinces, and the question is, does that come back to the municipalities? And then there's the issue of if we go with this situation, then they look at it as, you know, okay, you're going to collect it again. So the question of double taxation has come up time and time again. Do you have a response to that?
I do. That was brought up several years ago. We were able to receive a statement from the Finance Treasury of the Province of Ontario. The original setup that was done way, way, way back when for the tax portion that went on the policy was changed when Bill Davis was Premier of Ontario to go into general revenues and not directed towards any specific thing for the fire service. My comment to the industry is if you don't want to have the coverage, then take it out and lower the premium to the policyholder. But if you're going to charge a consumer for fire department coverage, then help facilitate the payment of the coverage. And that's what we've done. If that had been done in the past, our company wouldn't exist. But since it wasn't done in the past, we've created a mechanism along with our municipal partners to facilitate the coverage that is contained within the policy. We only bill to the limits of the coverage. So if the cost incurred is $10,000 and there's only $1,000 worth of coverage, $9,000 is absorbed through your budget and we only recover the $1,000. There is no double taxation. It does not take away the monies that the policyholder is entitled to receive, and there's no deductible applied to this. We have designed our program not to harm the policyholder in any way, and we believe that we've been true to that statement and continue to be.
Thank you. Some additional questions for you. So it happens right now, if there's a fire loss, then the insurance policy, check the insurance policy, and then the client who owns the policy should be able to go to his insurance company and say, okay, you pay for the fire department charges because the city would have sent a bill to the individual. So then they'll have to pass it on to the insurance company. So you're doing the same thing. You're facilitating the same situation. Taking it out of the hands of the customer who's going like, I don't get this, or giving to his insurance broker who has to deal with it. So, because you're operating a claims facility, what you've discussed here.
So I want to emphasize that I'm not an insurance expert. My background is municipal governance. So my colleagues are insurance experts. So I will do my best in a lay perspective to answer that question. All of the insurance acts across the country under statutory condition 8s define who can make a proof of claim against that policy. Anyone to whom those funds are entitled to receive can make a claim against that policy. That's not been challenged legally. So the coverage is there. The policyholder is not entitled to the money. They haven't really incurred the expense. We're not asking them to directly incur the expense. We are invoicing the insurance company directly. If the insurance company wants us to copy the information to the policyholder, we do that, but we do put in that letter and we stamp it, do not pay, your insurance company will pay. So we are facilitating a process that we understand what the policy wordings are. We understand that the policyholder is going through a traumatic experience, and we're not trying to add to any additional trauma to that process, which is why we work directly from retired adjuster to adjuster for the other side.
Okay, the trauma of it, yeah, I can understand that, but they're in business of trying to recoup their losses from the fire. So this may be helpful for them because they don't understand it, but I'm sure their insurance broker would understand it. So the question is it viable to that? I think there's some questions, obviously, with you work with a third of Ontario municipalities, mostly smaller municipalities, like the largest towns or cities like Mississauga and Toronto have their own system. They collect it. Basically, they will send the charge to the client. These are the fees. So the fees will have to be paid by the individual householder to do that. And they have additional fees that they will collect as well. So for them, they collect the money directly. In your process, you're collecting it and then sending us a percentage of it. Is that correct?
I'm not aware that the City of Toronto nor the City of Mississauga is billing for property-related incidents, and nor billing for insurers. They may be billing for other costs, which other departments do as well for motor vehicle. Ours are only property-related incidents. So I'm not aware that they're doing that.
It's in the fee schedule, but you could, if you wish to.
You could. We have clients, large clients. Our largest is in excess of 300,000 in population. So we have clients who have within their Treasury Department insurance adjusters who work within the Treasury Department, but those are legal liability specialists. So the slips and falls specialists, you trip on the sidewalk, you sue the municipality, you deal with that. Our adjusters are property insurance experts, and in the staff reports that have come forward from those with adjusters within their Treasury Department have recommended that we do the work instead of burdening their staff with any extra costs of uploading to facilitate that process.
Yes, I see that as a value there, trying not to burden the town with that additional expense. But we also collect fees for other things. So the question is, do we give it to Fire Marquee, or do we continue to do it ourselves and add more fees to it so that we get more of the pie, as it were? So the question is something we'll think about. But obviously, there's a lot of smaller municipalities that have gone this route. So that's interesting for us as well.
The decision to go through, through the chair, the decision to go through the smaller municipalities was a recommendation that I gave the directors and founders before I started working with them. I said small urban is more agile than large urban. It's not layered, and you need to have a proven track record of recoverability and success before you can demonstrate to large urban. Large urban, you could imagine that process to go through RFIs, RFPs, whatever, can take up to a year. Smaller urban communities, they can actually make a decision within 30 days to 90 days. Rural can make a decision in a matter of weeks. Local service boards, depending on when they meet, can make a decision within 2 meetings. So we wanted to demonstrate early on that the money is there, and the proof is in the pudding. We've recovered millions of dollars for clients across Ontario. We have expanded into British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan. I just came back from Manitoba, and we also have 3 clients in New Brunswick. We have the capital city of Fredericton, St. John, and Dieppe as clients. So we have expanded our business. I want to emphasize that early on in the process, the brokers did push back. There's less pushback from brokers today. They see the relationship with their clients to be very valuable, and sometimes the adjuster, whether it's contracted out for the insurer, is causing grief for them with their client, and they don't like that because they recognize that the coverage is there. But the original pushback came from brokers, but I think that's subsided substantially over the last 15 years. We actually consider them, in many cases, an ally in the conversation with let's say, a less than consumer-friendly adjuster on the other side.
One last question. I think that, for example, the city of Sudbury said they collected $125,000 in annual revenues most recently. So it's a cost benefit. So how much money you're getting out of it versus the time and effort they would have spent to collect it themselves. So this is maybe the argument they're having, and then you have to deal with the public issues as well. So we're not the size of the city of Sudbury, so our revenue would be a lot less based on the number of fires. So that's something that we'd have to look at. How much money we're going to get out of this. You've heard the story about we're looking for more revenues, so that's a potential as well. So it has to be analyzed along that basis.
Yes, and staff asked me to project a revenue cost recovery. The low end would be $18,000 per year, your share, and the high end would be $47,000 a year, your share, and that is without a large loss significant incident. As you are aware, your next door neighbor had a large loss incident, which the 1 year did dramatically increase their compensation levels, but those are exceptions as opposed to the norm. The township of Essa in 2014 had a tornado and the responding department and the 4 other departments. That was 103 properties that were impacted by that tornado. It was 41 different insurance adjusters, companies that we had to deal with. We received the files 11 months after the incident, and it took us another 10 months to recover. But that was a significant contribution back to those fire services.
If I could ask a question related to it, because of course the dollars have now come onto the table here. And in the report, it talks about 61 incidents in the last 3 years. So, and we've been talking about the amount of coverage on the policy, anywhere from $1,000 to potentially $5,000. So I was kind of thinking in the same ballpark that you were talking about, that I thought, okay, 61 incidents over 3 years, if the average is even $3,000 or $5,000 of coverage, and at the end of the day, less your commission, we might be in the ballpark of $15,000 to $20,000 a year of revenue. And it's not a lot, but even saying that, as a municipality, I think we always have to be looking at ways to find every little bit more than we possibly can, because every little bit more that we can does go a long ways to, doing multiple things for us, either keeping the levy down, or in this case, because the monies would be set aside and used on education, potentially capital assets, and we know what our asset management studies are telling us, that, we're all about to hit the wall, and we are. I think we do need to seriously entertain all these sorts of things, and although it might not be a lot of dollars at the end of the day, the coverage does exist on these policies, and is not being claimed against. So when I liked your example there, because I'm thinking, okay, if at the end of the day, let's say we bring in $15,000 and maybe your share is, I don't know, $6,000, $7,000. For claims of that amount over this entire municipality, over all the householders that are here, I kind of appreciated your chart that you had there, that, it is such a small percentage on the insurance company that by and large, I guess that's why your experience is that the premiums traditionally have not changed after all this has happened.
That part is correct. The math supports our assertion that there will be no premium increase due to our program. There is no inflationary pressure on that line item. It is static. It's a fixed cost. And the IBC's own language is that they've already forecasted they should be paying out. So I've used the illustration before. When was the last time we went to the grocery store and bought a loaf of bread and we weren't allowed to take it home? You're allowed to take it home. So this is a method to take it home, and the home is here. It may not be a lot of money, but it is significant money. The contributions to the Lincoln Fire Service next door, I know they're available to talk to you, and I was there today chatting with them. It has made significant contributions to their fire service budget.
Do any other committee members have any questions? Member Thompson.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you for the presentation. And through you, Chair, I just was a couple questions for you, and then just one comment at the end. Sorry, a couple questions and one comment at the end. So I guess, Grimsby we're growing. We're going to be a bigger city sooner than later, and we're all predicting it. And our row of townhouses, my house burns down, my neighbor attached to me burns, and the third one burns. They got 1,000, I've got 5,000, the other person has 0. We're going to get $6,000, but it's not equal. I have a real hard time with that. I just feel it just morally wrong that you're going to go after. Yes, they have it. They do that. But I'm thinking that's the way it would work, right? If that third person had 0 on theirs, you can't collect from them. That's correct, right?
Through the chair to the former deputy fire chief. Yes, and essentially that is correct. Are you not? Oh, I thought you were. So the industry established the Guide to Overlapping Principles in the mid-90s and how to, if it's multiple properties, multiple policies, how to apply the equation to be fair to their policyholders. So yes, we use that. But if there's no insurance coverage, then there is no recovery. We're not sending a bill to your ratepayer and saying, we want you to pay this bill and eat the cost. That is not our program. Our program is designed only to recover from the insurance industry to the limits of the coverage. We wanted to ensure there was no additional harm or trauma provided to your stakeholders, your neighbors and friends.
May I just interrupt for 1 second? So the amount of coverage is irrelevant, though. You're billing the calculation that our fire department provides you with, and the insurance company is they're looking at each policy that you're billing under, and then they are remitting to you what they are allowed to under the coverage of the policy. And that's where it stops. So before you bill, do you know what the coverage is under someone's policy?
Yes, we have a database of policy wording, so I know what the wordings are. So I provided invoices, sanitized invoices of examples to staff so that they could look at that and review it. I took composite departments, similar sized municipalities, so that you could see what the costs were in similar sized like departments. And let's say it's a $20,000 cost, but there's only $10,000 worth of recovery. Well, we're only recovering 10. We're not recovering 20. If it was the Aviva policy on my home, well, then we could recover all 20, but we're only recovering to the limits of the policy.
Member Thompson, did you have some further questions?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Member Demare made a good point there. Can you clarify who is doing the billing? In Fire Marquee, or is the town of Grimsby doing it?
Through the chair to the member, we are doing both the calculation of the invoice, so that we ask on a biannual basis what the costs are of the fire service. We have that summary sheet. So then when we get your standard incident report, we calculate from that the time that the incident was alarmed to the time that is returned back into service. All of those eligible costs that are recoverable, we generate that invoice and we send it to the adjuster for the other side.
Okay, so you were saying you didn't come from the insurance industry, so through my insurance company, who I just spoke to, I'm just curious, how do you, I guess you don't collect from places that don't have it in their policy saying they don't pay out to third-party collection agencies, they only pay out to municipalities. And more insurance companies are moving that way. I have two of them I can name. I'm just curious what's going to happen then.
Through the chair to the councillor, the member. If the tactic that is being employed by a less than consumer-friendly company, if the coverage is there and they're refusing an invoice from us, then we will have a communication with our client and say, these are the options that you can do to enforce the bylaw. And so we've employed in the bylaw options that if they're denying the coverage is there and our policy wordings say the coverage is there, then in your bylaw we've asked that it be included that if we tell you that the policy wording is coverage and they're saying there is no coverage, then produce the wording of the policy because our wordings are up to date. If there is no coverage, then once again, there is like my father-in-law's cottage near Owen Sound, Ontario had no coverage because it was a cottage that was not accessible in the wintertime. So there was no fire department expense coverage. So there are policies out there with zero coverage. Some rental policies have zero coverage. Other rental policies do.
Correct. And my concern is these insurance companies won't pay out. So now you're the company representing Grimsby who's going to be putting pressure on the resident of our town or business of our town to go after their insurance company to collect on the money that is there. And you stay on them, I guess. Where strong ER&R bylaw or bylaws that we have in place, user fees, which do collect significant money, can just go right on a tax roll if they refuse to pay, and we don't have an issue and we get 100%.
So there's 196 insurance companies. They're kind of like yours. I'm going to be broad-based in my statements here. They're kind of like your taxpayers. Most are really nice to deal with. Some are okay to deal with. There's a few that are not really nice to deal with. And then there's 2 or 3 that just go, oh gosh, not that person. So yeah, there are some issues. Whoops. there are some issues with certain adjusters for certain companies. And we try to work around that. And we try to provide the advice, our best advices to our client. I can't do certain things without our client's approval. So our relationship will be with your professional staff, and we will provide advice, and they will provide direction, and then we will move forward.
So there is staff involvement now. Okay. So that's good to hear.
There is staff involvement when the less than consumer-friendly adjuster is forcing that issue. So the municipality's not the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy. The one that's being the bad guy in this equation is the one who's refusing to acknowledge the coverage is there and it should be paid because their policyholder has paid for the coverage.
And I'm not taking that away. You're exactly right. I've dealt with, as you said, many of those people. And as I've said in an email to the director and staff, that I believe that strong user fees and that we currently have, which we have recovered 100% of the money, is there, and it's not $1,000, $500, it could be $10,000. We've recovered it all. At the end of the day, my comment, I guess, through you, Chair, is basically, I know user fees are a necessity of a municipality, but when I was working in Fire Marquet, great relation, great company, I believe, do a good job and everything, but I just didn't believe it was a fit for Grimsby at the time. And one reason we never brought it forward, and I know our partners in Lincoln have it, and it's working well for them, but when I see a small economic incentive, when we're handing out 8,000, 14,000 extra budget amendments here, there, everything consistently, sometimes I wonder, because I think we'd have to really fool ourselves if we don't think collectively across Canada to anything. If insurance is being collected, somebody's got to pay it back in the future, and premiums do go up. We saw it with sewer charges on your houses, backup sewers. I used to be very little. It's absolutely huge now. I've never had a claim. It happens, so I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we didn't say premiums will go up one day. May not for now. They're doing their job, and they're doing a good job, and they're doing a great job for municipalities. But at this point in time, it's just not for me. Thank you.
Councillor Howd will recognize next his questions.
Thank you, through you, Chair, or whomever. I thought this whole premise and any discussions that I've had about collecting fees always seemed to, in my mind, came to the QEW. You know, what we run into out there and just the confusion, the finger pointing, at least that's kind of what I get the impression of. And that's the big bugaboo. That's what I thought. I didn't know, and I'm listening, and I personally apologize, I didn't do enough homework. But for instance, someone has property in their house. Do we give them a bill for if we attend for a fire at their house? Question.
So your
I'm gonna
bylaw
ask
would cover your
either our
geographic.
guest or our director to, whichever one is best able to answer that for us.
Our bylaw would cover your geographic boundary for property-related incidents. If you're responding to I guess it's the Kings Highway now. If you're responding to the Kings Highway, that relationship is with MTO and your billing. And I'm going to suggest to you that you're not being paid all your costs. You're being paid the costs that they say that are your costs, and we deal with that in municipal government all the time.
So if I may, then Chris is, so this, you do not go after the MTO, like, no?
Respectfully, no.
Okay.
The motor vehicle is very
Yeah,
different
yeah.
than property. Property, you're an identified first-party coverage under the additional coverages section. The fire department is named in that coverage, and then you also have through the Insurance Act, the statutory conditions. So you do have statutory power, and then through the Municipal Act, through user fees, you also have statutory power. You have a lot of power to go after that type of recovery. MTO is a relationship. Highways, no. Until those regulations change, no, we're not a collection agency. We're a professional services corporation, so no.
If I can, I guess maybe for the director, I don't see anything in the agreement that suggests the time frame for it. Is it something that, we could review? Is there a minimum amount of time that we'd have to sign for, I guess, Chris, is what I'm asking? And if not, is it something that we can review in a short time, I think?
Yes, your staff have asked that question of me through the chair to you. So yes, almost all of our, I shouldn't say that, more than half of our clients enter into a 5-year agreement with us. The remaining 2/5 kind of thing are 3 years. There is a cancellation clause in there of 30 days. And so if you're unhappy, then we receive a letter from the clerk saying council said goodbye. And that gives us 30 days to disentangle ourselves from any process that we're involved in. There's no reason. You don't have to tell me why. You can just do it. But the terms are yours. Our ask is for 5. We're satisfied with 3. And you can ask for a review don't do it in a year because it's just a pain in the butt, but give it a year and a half or 2 years because some of those claims processes take a long time.
And if I could add, I believe we're proposing 3 years.
Councillor Cristanchi?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd kind of like to hear from the fire department because, it's really has a lot to do with them. Do we have a representative from fire?
I don't believe we do, but I can tell you that this afternoon I did meet with our deputy fire chief, and he said he is very much in favor of this. Councillor Vardy.
I'm a little confused. So what I'd like to know is, have we not been collecting this money before? So this is a new source of revenue. And we could have collected it, but we'd have the administrative burden of contacting the insurer to get it. So basically, we're subcontracting the administration of this part of the collection, of this opportunity, which we haven't gone after before. And if we were to do it ourselves, technically we could, but how much time and effort and cost would there be? Would it equate to more than the 30% that we're losing on the claim? So maybe somebody could help me out with that.
I'm going to ask our finance director to respond to that.
Thank you. That's correct. I think one thing to add, there's the expertise. They're dealing with this every day. Staff here would be dealing with this on an occasional basis, and there could be recoveries that get missed.
Councillor Howe had his hand up first.
Then this is probably a question that I would have liked to have gone before, but if I can ask, what do we bill in a given year to the fire department? Bills do we issue and do we get paid for? I don't recall seeing that kind of a number on a budget form or any of our deliberations. So I don't know if we're collecting $1.98 or if we're collecting my paycheck or something like that. But I just don't know. I really don't know how big a deal it is and what it offsets. So I'm wrestling with it.
Mr. Delmonico, would you like to respond to the budget numbers or anything along those lines?
Yes, I think the user fee budget for fire is $40,000, if I'm not mistaken, for things like MTO recoveries and fire inspection fees. And there is no budget for these recoveries because we aren't collecting anything right now.
Any further questions? So we'll have one last round of questions and then we will call for the vote. Member Thompson, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Chair, to the Director. You were just saying that we don't have these recoveries in our user fees. I believe if you look at them, there is several. And as I was saying, I think improved ones in our user fees, you'll collect 100%, and it's not very difficult. It's not hard to miss. On a fire hose, if you want it recovered from a house fire, you actually have the actual price of it. So there is an opportunity to improve. We used to collect money on things called DSPAs. They're $1,500. We used to throw these little bombs in, and they paid them out. So there is in our user fees and bylaws, so.
If I could just clarify just to that statement, DSPA units were used by a number of our clients and were in existing bylaws. So what we've done through our policy with our client is that if it's a $10,000 expense and you have in your existing bylaw an extraordinary expense clause where it's covered, let's say $1,500, then we take the $1,500 off of the invoice total, so we only receive 30%. In this case, it would have been $8,500. Our program is designed not to take any existing revenue from you that is currently in your user fee bylaw. So a lot of them have extraordinary costs, whether it's a backhoe or something else for public safety, not fire investigation, but public safety, and that is something that we do take off the top. We want to add to your revenue, not take away from it.
And then Member Demare, did I see your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, some good discussions on this. So the point was, I thought we were collecting money for this because there was obviously fire services charges that should have been sent to the resident, and then the resident would have got the invoice or from us, and they would have paid it. And if he didn't pay it with a certain period of time, then it goes on the tax roll. That's what I understand happens in most municipalities. So if we're not doing this, then this service should be, okay, come in and do it. It's all full piece, can be done all at once. Or we could do it ourselves, again, depending what we want to add to that, like other user fees, which we're not collecting for either. And then to meet the budget that's there, we got additional income because there's a lot more things that I see other municipalities are charging fees for. And then the homeowners getting the fees from their local government, right? So as opposed to a third party who's representing that government. So that's the question, I guess, comes down to, I thought maybe we were doing it. If we're not doing it, then we should do it. And how we do it is going to be an item of discussion.
I'm going to ask Mr. Delmonico to step in, but we had some discussions along that, you and I, about the ability to carry this or to add this additional work into your workload. And perhaps you'd like to just share your answer on that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the issue of staff capacity and expertise. And it's not something we're doing now. So there would be no additional costs that we would be incurring. It is a 3-year agreement. If we do it for 3 years and say, hey, we can do this ourselves, then maybe we can reassess at that point in time. And speaking with Jim, they felt the same way, that their staff really don't have the capacity right now to handle this additional administrative work. And so we thought that contracting it out to a third party would be a viable alternative.
So I can confirm in discussions with our deputy chief, though, that he confirmed exactly what you said. One last question. Some of you have had an opportunity to ask at least two. Any other comments? Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Then in the short term, do we need to do a review of the bylaws and what the charges are, or is that already available to us? That, for instance, Chris, if we don't have it in our bylaw, can we be expected, or can you be expected to collect on something, on a property? Let's talk property.
The short answer is no. The policy is written, the insurance policy wording is written in such a way where it says local ordinance, legal requirement, responsibility requirement to pay. It just depends on the policy wordings. So the user fee bylaw, to amend your fee bylaw or standalone bylaw, is your legislative authority. That's your key to unlock the coverage contained within that insurance contract. So if the bylaw isn't there, then good luck. You're at the mercy of the process, and I'm going to suggest to you, no, you're not going to be paid, because why would they if they don't have to?
And related to that, and Mr. Delmonico can refresh all our memories, but when the study was done of our fees and so on, there were a number of items on there listed for follow-up where the consultant said, you need to look further into these areas. There is the potential for revenue here. And I thought this was one of them. Is that correct? Am I remembering it correctly?
Yes, I believe that's correct. The user fee study that was completed last year, one of the recommendations was to review to see if there were opportunities for further fire revenue recoveries.
And just to be clear, there's a lot of fire strat plans out there that recommend the user fee bylaw review, and they actually name our company. I just want to be clear that we have no association with any of these companies. They're not receiving any monetary compensation for such a recommendation using our name.
Thank you for clarifying that. If everyone has had an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have, then we are going to call for the vote. And so I will, pardon me, step one. I would like a mover and seconder resolve that the presentation from Mr. Carrier of Fire Marquee Incorporated be received for information. Could I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Vardy has so moved and Member Thompson has seconded that. So I will first ask for the vote to receive this report. All those in favor by show of hands, please, to receive the report. Sorry, to receive the presentation, let me be clear. And that is everyone in favor, thank you. Now we've had quite a bit of discussion already on the floor for discussion about this particular item. So I will start by asking for a mover and seconder resolve that the report Finance 25-38 from the Fire Marquee Agency Agreement dated July 24th, 2025 be received for information. And, sorry, I'm just going to, can you just move? There's one line I can't read yet, thank you. But just to have a mover and seconder so that we can take the vote on it. So Member Thompson is so moved, Councillor Corstangi has seconded that. Has everyone had an opportunity to ask questions or have any thoughts? Councillor Howe, one last chance.
Chair, if we could, I feel that we need to run this over to our next meeting, because I've got a whole lot of questions to try to understand. I've been, boy, this has been entertaining, as to what we need to do and because what we're saying in my mind is we've got to review the bylaws and have that ready to go. If we don't have that, then Fire Marquee has got nothing to work with, right? If they can't bill.
No, it would be a separate bylaw that would be then going to council to allow Fire Marquee to act on our behalf. It wouldn't be modifying the user fee bylaw.
Member Tamer.
In perusing other municipalities and their fee services, there are a number of fire services, such as false alarms, such as training, such as other things that I think perhaps we get involved with somewhat, maybe in a lower amount. But they charge substantial dollars for that, and they collect that money. Now, I understand the point about not having the expertise or the people to do that. But if we haven't collected any money in the past, then maybe we should look at it because of the need for us to find alternative sources of income. And to me, what I understand, there's a fair amount beyond this portion for fire services under the insurance policy, but these are direct fees for such things as false alarms and so on and so forth, or even the MTO issue. But again, that's against do we have the expertise to do that? But Fire Marquee is offering one component of that. So I think this should be, I agree with Councillor Howe, they should be pushed forward to another meeting to look at it further because there is a lot more potential discussions in here and to look at the cost benefit on this.
then I'm going to say, do we have a motion to defer? Councillor Howe is moving that, and Member Demare is seconding that. That will take precedence, and we'll vote first on the motion to defer, and then if that fails, then we will go back to the original motion. So the clerk has kindly drafted that for me. So resolve that Finance Report 25-38 from dealing with the Fire Marquee Agency Agreement dated July 24th, 2025, be deferred to the next meeting of the Finance Committee. We have a mover and a seconder, and by a show of hands, all those in favor of deferring? And those who are opposed to deferring? We have one opposed. So the motion is carried, and we will not be moving to the original motion at this time. Might I suggest that if some of our committee members have further questions, that you kind of summarize them perhaps and send them along. Our process is to send them to the chair, and I will forward them usually to our treasurer to consider. And with the committee members like our deputy fire chief to attend the next meeting as well then, would you find that helpful as well to hear? Then we can certainly extend the invitation to attend at the next meeting. So this matter is deferred, and we will move on to the rest of our agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Carrier, for attending. Yes? To the next finance meeting. Yes, which will be in August.
This is up to date now. You can
Okay.
just follow through, and I've crossed out the ones that we've already done.
Thank you. Thank you. The clerk's kindly getting me back on track here. So we will now go back up to item 8.1 on our agenda, which is our Community Services Report 25-30. And before we begin, I would like to just have a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor for discussion. So Councillor Vardy and Councillor Howe has seconded that. Tonight we have with us our Director of Community Services, Ms. Sweeney, and so you have the floor.
Through the chair, perhaps if I could just start, and then Sarah could help answer questions. So the purpose of the report is to secure funding to carry out strategic planning for the Grimsby Museum and Art Gallery. Both the Art Gallery and Museum receive annual operating grants to help support their operating budgets. And a requirement of those grants is to have an up-to-date strategic plan. Now, work on the plan needs to begin in 2025 with completion for Q2 of 2026 in order to meet the deadline for the next grant application. And the request here is for $25,000 in total to be funded, $17,000 from Corporate Projects Reserve and $8,000 from the Museum Capital Reserve. Thanks.
Would you like to add any further comments to that before we invite the committee to ask questions? Anything you'd like to add to Mr. Delmonico's comments?
Sure, thank you, Chair. I think the Treasurer summarized it well, but both of the groups, just to emphasize, both the Art Gallery and the Museum, they operate independently. In the past, they've always done separate strategic plans, and they both do require them from these funding bodies. So for the Art Gallery, it's Ontario Arts Council. For the Museum, it is the Community Museum Operating Grant. We've always done them separately. This year, the plan would be with this is to still have separate plans to satisfy those grant requirements, but actually do them in tandem because there is a lot of related material. The CMOG in particular, which is the museum, they have to have it in place for June next year. So it's just making sure we're giving ourselves enough time to complete that work.
Thank you. Councillor Vardy has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess my only question is, knowing that this was required to get grants, why was it not originally in the budget?
Through the chair, great question. We expected we had one more year. When they do these rotations year to year, they let them know what is going to be required the coming year. This came a little faster than they expected in terms of actually providing an updated version. So we were thinking it would come in 2026, but now knowing the timeline, we just need to push it up a little bit.
Thank you.
Any other further questions from committee members on this? Member Thompson, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Chair. I think I'm just reading this wrong. You're asking for 25,000, but under the background in page 1 of 4 of the report, both operating grants generates 26,000. So we're given 25 to get 26. Am I just wrong there?
Through the chair, so happy to respond to that. So we're asking for the total amount for the grant would be, for the budget amendment would be to do the strategic plan for 5 years for both the art gallery and for the museum. The art gallery receives $26,000 approximately annually from OIC, and the museum receives approximately the same from CMOG annually. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any further questions? Yes, Member Vardy. Sorry, Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. So will this one strategic plan be able to be used in successive years? So it's just the one time of 25 and we can get that money every other year. We don't have to keep doing this again until we hit year 5, right?
Through the chair, that's correct. So it would be a 5-year plan. So this should give us all that we need for 5 years to satisfy those requirements. Just to be clear, they don't require it always every year. So they pick different things year to year to look at. But every year, if they ask for that in that 5-year span, we would be within what they need.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. And this is kind of out of bounds, and you can tell me, but the library is going to be doing a strat plan. Any chance that that could also be piggybacked? And I understand that they're completely different, but there are certain things that are going to remain constant over them. Is there any way that that can be done, or are we too far gone?
I believe through the chair, I believe where the library is at with theirs, they're pretty far down the line. But certainly in terms of looking at things, we would look at the library, even other institutions, even other culture facilities in terms of partnerships possibilities, so that can be part of it. But I don't know that they would actually be able to be aligned specifically in the work, but I think more on our outcomes of how do we work together to achieve shared goals.
Any other questions to the director? To either directors? Seeing none, then the resolution that is on the table has already been moved and seconded, so I will actually read the details of the resolution. So resolve that report DCS 25-30, the Community Services Budget Amendment Request for the Culture Strategic Plan dated July 24th, 2025, be received for information, and that 1, the Finance Committee recommends that Council approve the budget amendment request of $25,000 to create a new operating project for the Culture Strategy Plan, and 2, that the Finance Committee is recommending to Council to approve the budget amendment be funded $17,000 from the Corporate Project Reserve and $8,000 from the Museum Capital Reserve, as is outlined in the report. By a show of hands, please, all those in favor? And that is carried. The next item on the agenda, 8.2, has to do with DCS 25-31, which is the Community Services Budget Amendment Request regarding the International Plowing Match. If I could have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor Howe and Councillor Korstanji. And at this point, I guess it's back to either of the two of you about the IPM.
Thank you, Chair. So the IPM is coming up in September. If you are not aware, I will just say, if you are not aware, please do mark it on your calendars. It's going to be quite the event. The number of people that the IPM draws to our area is incredible, and we will only see it in our area once in our lifetime. It's going to be quite the event. I think they say 50,000 people or more even over the 5 days. It's quite considerable. And even in talking to previous municipalities who've had it there, have really found that there's been just a real huge tourism draw to the area. So this particular budget amendment is to make sure that we're representing Grimsby well at the event. So most of this will go towards marketing for the event, either on-site or promoting, things to do in Grimsby during that time. Really just trying to capture everything we can out of promoting Grimsby to all the visitors to the event. We will be having a booth set up, probably a 20 by 20 tent space at this point in time that will be staffed in a variety of ways over the 5 days. We're working with the farmers market to do a bit of an expanded event there and possibly a few other things that we tease in as well. But really just want to make sure we're at the event and we're showing up to it and have some good materials. I will just also mention a lot of times when we do these types of things, some of the assets we build, if we do some maps or different materials or signage and different things, we always try to never use them only once. We always try to build them in ways that we can use them for other events and activities as well.
Are there any questions from committee members? Then we will call for the vote. All those, and I will read the exact resolution, so bear with me. Resolve that report DCS 25-31, the Community Services Budget Amendment request regarding the International Plowing Match events and Rural Expo support dated July 24th, 2025 be received for information, and that the Finance Committee recommends that Council approve the budget amendment request of $8,000 to increase the operating project for the IPM funded from the Levy Program Contingency and Stabilization Reserve. All those in favor by a show of hands, please. And that is carried. The next item on our agenda is number 8.3, dealing with the Finance Report 25-36, the Grimsby Community Development Grant Update. In order to get it on the floor, if I could have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Korstanji has so moved, and Member Demare has seconded. And I will turn it over to you, Mr. Delmonico.
Thank you. This is the third iteration of this now annual grant program, and it's now open. A total of $100,000 in grant funding is available, and applicants can apply for 30% of eligible project costs up to a maximum of $100,000. The aim of the grant program is to support initiatives that align with council objectives and contribute to the overall community. The report includes an update on past recipients. You can see that the first year the grant was available, $100,000 was awarded to McNally House and Nels Manor. All funding has now been dispersed. Last year, $46,000 was awarded in total to Nels Manor, YMCA, and the Cooper Robertson Foundation, with 75% of the funds having been paid out to them to date. And in this round, the application period opened on July 14th and closes September 14th. The grant policy and application guide are available on the town's website for those that may be interested in applying. Thank you.
Any questions from committee members? Member Howe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. What's the uptake, and when I say uptake, the interest, for instance, in 25, how many applications were there for, sharing in this money or in this grant process? Because it just seems like the numbers are not as many as I thought. People looking for some help. Now, I understand that, our criteria is protecting our ratepayer, so it's not just a fly-by-night and, going forward, but so we've got to certainly protect the municipality. But are we getting across to enough people? Are we doing anything wrong with such a small interest level? Is it, do we need to give people maybe more of a hand with writing? A lot of people will see these applications, but I understand why, because our first obligation is to the municipality, but is there, so that they understand it, because there's lots of help. I mean, people can get help for filling out these type of forms. Certainly, there's just about anybody up here at the desk, I think that would certainly help or do whatever they could. Certainly, the finance staff are going to answer yes, no, and the questions, and I get that, but is there something we can do? I'd just like to see more interest, that's all.
So through the chair, yeah, last year, those 3 recipients were the 3 applicants, so there weren't any that were turned away. So maybe it's a matter of getting the word out. I do believe the CAO was on the local radio station earlier this week to help promote the grant, so hopefully that will help get the word out. And it is only the 3rd year of the grant. Maybe once it becomes, and it was a pilot at first, now it's become approved as on an annual basis. Perhaps that will help with uptake.
I do agree with Councillor Howe's comments that, as a council, on behalf of our municipality, we do get requests that come to us. And, the problem, and I will use a phrase that I think Councillor Vardy used it back at the beginning, that first one past the post to ask shouldn't necessarily get all the money. There should be a fair and equitable process to apply for these monies. And to gauge sort of, whether they really are of benefit. I feel a personal responsibility that if we are giving away money on behalf of all the taxpayers who have contributed to the town, that we as a council, we as a finance committee and so on as staff, need to be careful about how we do that we don't just give it away, to use the expression, willy-nilly, but that it is done in a thoughtful manner to good applicants who will use it wisely, et cetera, right? So certainly the program has moved us along that point. I did see it, by the way, advertised through social media of the town as well. So that is certainly out there too. And of course, we did amend our policy as time went on that we would extend the program each year. If we ended the year with a surplus, then the policy now says that we will continue to offer it for another year. So we really only do so if we sort of end in a favorable position the year, and then we'll continue it as well. But Councillor Vardy, would you like to add some comments?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to say that we do have a grid in terms of what qualifies, what doesn't qualify. So if we had only 3 applicants and none of them qualified, then we wouldn't give the money out. So we didn't just give it because these were the only 3 and we just divvied it up. We didn't do that. I mean, they'd have to qualify. And I can tell you with one that I've had experience with personally is the Cooper, what's his name, Foundation? Cooper Robertson, he's actually my neighbor. Sorry. When they have the event at Southward Park, there are hundreds of little kids that come out, and they do the walk around Southward Park. I think it's 1 kilometer. And, it's a great way to get kids involved in some kind of charity and some kind of physical activity. Like, there's a lot of, I'd say, community benefit to it, in addition to the support of the Cooper Robertson Foundation, which is, poor little Coops has got quite a challenge ahead of him. So it's a good cause, but there's also, I saw a huge amount of community engagement for it. So, that I think is a real benefit, indirect.
I'd like to just ask a question, and then I will acknowledge Councillor Kristanji to have the floor. My question was to our director or to our staff. Is there a time limit that we have put into our policy as well, that the recipients that we're awarding these grants to they have 1 year, 18 months, something like that, to show us that they have used it or they lose it? I'm trying to remember the details of it.
Yeah, through the chair, there is a time limit. I'll just defer to Angela to give the details on that.
Thank you, through you. The process,
the project has to be completed within 1 year, and there is a semi-annual reporting requirement and an annual reporting requirement. And they have to spend, again, the grant is up to 30% of the project, and so they have to provide support to show that they've at least spent the matching for that. It's not a full amount.
So if they didn't complete it within 1 year, theoretically, would we ask for even, we wouldn't award them the second part of it, but we do make an advance on the first part of it, right?
Correct. Through the chair, yes, we do make an advance on the initial signing of the agreement, and then at final, we would disperse the balance. But then if they haven't completed based on what the requirements were, they would have to reimburse the town. So we have, and if we needed to extend, I think we'd be back in front of committee to ask for an extension.
Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Kristanji, you had some questions or comments. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think maybe we need to communicate it better to the community to take advantage of it. Because, I mean, we talk about it at council, and I've seen the social media posts, but maybe people don't understand how it works, what it's for, and maybe showing some of the examples of what it's been used for, and different things like that, and really showcasing it might encourage other groups. And maybe it's sending out a newsletter or something saying, hey, did you know that this is available, to some of those groups that might partake. Because I know I've talked to a few people that had no idea about it, right? So maybe it's a little bit more thorough communication might help too.
Member Demare, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Further the discussions on that point that was made about getting it out there to the public. I think the public knows about this and the Trillium grants and everything else, but smaller groups may not understand how it works, because there's two requirements that you sort of like 30%, 70%. You get 30% of their project budget to a certain maximum, right? So if their project budget was, I don't know, $10,000, 30% is $3,000, maybe won't have the cash to put up the rest of the funds. Maybe their budget's very small. The second part is maybe they're not incorporated as a nonprofit. Maybe this is a group, an athletic group, something like that. They're not incorporated. So they look at it and go, well, I'm not incorporated. I'm not going to spend the money to be incorporated. It's too expensive. So we're out. We're out of that. So if that's the rules of the game, then we'd like to apply, but we can't. And secondly, we have a small operating budget, and we can't get involved in it. So these smaller groups that are community groups for the benefit of the residents need the help of the town, I think, to be involved in that. So the question is there any way that town gets involved, gets help out with some of this? So that may elicit more response if you had that to it. But if it's as it stands right now, those are the two impediments that I just talked about.
I would like to kind of take your comments into consideration in that I have actually looked at the application form right from the beginning when we were designing the program. I don't think the form are that complicated to complete. And I realize I come from a world where I'm usually used to completing quite complex documents. So, I do look at it with that lens. But really, it's not that complex to fill out. And the criteria on what types of groups could apply is because what we're trying to encourage is that it be well-respected registered charities or not-for-profit groups who will be able to carry through and actually carry on the project and implement it. What we don't want to have is truly what I'll facetiously call fly-by-night operations, where, a couple of residents get together, claim they're an association of some kind and apply. I mean, we want these to be legitimate organizations that are, because we're giving out taxpayer money, and it's public money that's been collected from all the ratepayers. So we want to make sure that it's going to reputable parties who are going to undertake these projects. So we are being careful for a lot of reasons, right? But truly, knowing our staff, I'm thinking that if they showed up at the counter and said, I'm struggling to complete the form, I truly cannot imagine anybody in this room, that's our staff, to say, no, 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 we can't help you with that. Like, I'm sure they would come to the counter and explain and say, oh, what we meant is you have to put this in here and so on. Like, I'm pretty sure they're going to get help if they come looking for it. Mr. Delmonico, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Just regarding the eligibility, there is another grant, I want to get the name right, the Community Project Grant Program that's also available that is open to, community clubs and groups as well. So just to keep that in mind.
Which is another process through our Community Services Department is how it's done. So we actually, and I'm going to say that one's probably on a slightly smaller scale in terms of the total dollars that we've budgeted compared to this one, which traditionally council has budgeted up to $100,000 to be set aside for this program. So we do sort of, I guess, really have things tailored to both the small and maybe the moderate or larger ones, but yes, up to. Member Demare.
I just wanted to clarify that about, yes, I appreciate the fly-by-night issues, but if these people, these groups are not basically having the wherewithal to become incorporated nonprofits or choose not to be, but they've worked with the town over a number of years and worked with the town knows them quite well, then I think there's no more fly-by-night issue. So I'm pointing out there is that little gap there that, okay, you need to be incorporated as a nonprofit. That may push people up. Plus the budget issue, that they don't have a big budget, so they can't really come up with a lot of money to be the 70%. That's what I'm saying. That little group there, that's maybe the group that you want to look at.
Any other comments by committee members on this program? And certainly our staff can take some of the suggestions that they've heard from the committee and can always reread the document. And as we work through the next year, if you have any ideas on how to improve it, certainly we're always interested in those. If there are no further comments or suggestions, then the motion on the floor is resolved that report Finance 25-36, the Grimsby Community Development Grant Update, dated July 24th, 2025, be received for information. By show of hands, all those in favor, please. And that is carried. We're almost there, folks. I believe we have two more. So item 8.4 on our agenda is Finance Report 25-37, having to do with the Peach King Center expansion. If I could have a mover and seconder to get this report on the floor. Member Thompson has so moved, and Councillor Cristangi has seconded. Mr. Delmonico, do you want to take a few minutes and walk us through that?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be brief. This report shows the actual costs incurred to date as of July 8th, along with the forecast of the remaining expenditures. We're still forecasting to come in on budget with a small surplus of 33,000 forecasted. We've now incurred actual and contracted costs of 33.7 million against the total budget of 36.7 million. We're now at 60% construction progress, and 45% of our contingency has been used, so still in good shape there. We are, however, forecasting that we will end up using the full contingency, and that's why we're resulting in that small surplus. Any questions or comments?
Any questions from the committee members? I could ask a question that had to do with our financial statements, and I meant to ask, and so this report has jogged my memory again, on the matching of the grant that we're getting from the province for it. So can you just run and update us again on how much we have received in grant from the province and how much is owing, what the process is, kind of how does our cash revenues compare to our expenditures on the program?
Yeah, you'd be referring to the SPIF grant there. Defer to Angela if she could provide an update on that, please.
No problem. Thank you. Through the chair. So the grant is up to, I believe, it's 16.9 million roughly. Their submissions, the milestones are submitted twice a year in the spring and in the fall. And so far, we've received roughly just over 600,000 for our milestones, which is 1, 2, and 3. We've submitted 4 and 5. Now they're getting larger. So that's why you're seeing on our financial statements roughly 5.9 outstanding for the grants, and that's because they're sitting in our receivable. We haven't received them yet, and we are following up to see where the funding is. The problem with this agency is there's a lot of turnover, so we always have to follow up and get it back on track again so we can get our money. So now that the project is gearing up, we're seeing larger milestones being submitted.
And the total amount of the grant that we will be receiving for this was approximately 18 million? Was it in that neighborhood? No, pardon me.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just under 17 million.
So just under 17 million, and on our 2024 financial statements, as you said, we're recognizing the revenue that will be coming to match the expenditures to that time period, which is some 5.9 million still outstanding for 2024.
Yes, through you. The granting, I believe the percentage that they match is 73.33. So that's the amount that we're covering off. So we're balancing between our funding and their funding, and we're carrying any unfunded at the moment.
And then one last question. Sorry, sometimes there seems to be so many things going on, and then certain things come up and kind of jogs the memory again. The HST, as I recall, we were going to, or your department was looking into how much of that conceivably we could recover on all of that. Could you just bring us up to date on that too?
Yeah, through the chair. So the report here assumes that we'll be getting the 86% rebate on the HST. We are having a consultant provide us with an opinion on whether we can claim the full 100% rebate. That's still in progress, and we'll update the committee once we hear more.
Thank you. That was the part I was missing in my memory there. Thank you for updating us on that. Any further questions on the report itself? Seeing none, then the motion on the table is resolved that report, Finance Report 25-37 on the Peach King Center expansion, July 2025 update that is dated July 24th, 2025, be received for information. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And that is carried. The next and perhaps last item on the agenda is item 8.4, Finance Report, 8.6, which is Finance Report 25-39. It's on the 2025 first term financial update, and if I could have a mover and seconder to get it on the floor. Councillor Vardy has so moved. Councillor Korsanji has seconded. And we will turn it over to you, Mr. Delmonico, to give us a brief update. Thank you.
Thank you. This report is based on revenues and expenses up to the end of April, so it's very preliminary. We're projecting a small overall deficit of about 13,000. On the levy side, we're projecting a 200,000 surplus, mainly due to building permit revenues. WSIB costs are projected to come in at 70,000 for non-fire staff and 240,000 for fire staff, so about 300,000 in total. The non-fire WSIB costs have been allocated to the Human Resources Department, so that's what's driving the HR deficit. The fire-related WSIB costs have been allocated to the fire department. However, that variance is being offset by projected savings in volunteer firefighter wages. On the rate side of things, the wastewater consumption is trending below budget for the first few months, and that's leading to a 480,000 projected deficit. Savings in water expenses related to staffing vacancies are leading to a 260,000 estimated surplus. The next variance report is planned to come to the Finance Committee in September and will be based on revenues and expenses up to the end of July. Thank you.
Are there any questions about the report or anything within the report? Committee members? I guess I have a question on when, and it's not a specific one on any specific numbers within the report. I guess it's more, I'll call it a thought-provoking question. As we go through these exercises every year, we do our best to budget these things, and then life throws some curves at us, and, you know, actual life comes to us. But we very often have variances from budget. And it's not that we want to work exactly to the budget, but I guess my question is, what do we learn every year when we have these variances? Are there patterns or similarities that we begin to notice after a while? And I guess that's my question to our senior staff, where you might go through this and say, you know, this particular department, yada, yada, yada. Or, you know, the region, they're always kind of doing this. Maybe we should, you know, take a slightly different tack to how we come up with the number. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is there anything you find you're kind of learning from this? Because life is always evolving, and just when we think we figured it out, life throws another curve at us, of course. Is there anything that, you know, you would say, you know what we've really learned from this process is A, B, and C? Any thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think really it depends on what's driving the variances, right? Certainly these reports help formulate budgets and identify needs such as the WSIB costs, right? We're learning that we don't have enough budgeted to cover our WSIB expenses right now. And that's kind of been a recurring theme the past couple of years. I think that's really the biggest thing, is trying to identify what's driving the variance. Is it something that's an anomaly, or is it something that is expected to recur on an annual basis? And if it's something that's expected on an annual, then that's something you're going to want to, you know, rectify, I guess, in your budget.
Would you like to comment on that at all, Angela?
No, I think Tony did a great job. I think if you're thinking about departments and tools, and if they're looking at past historical and what drives those changes, we do provide those analysis, like we do provide a year over year, so they can see what the historical has been, what the average is, and sometimes those discussions saying why, and then they're saying because there might be something special that's happening this year. So they may not have been spending it in past, but now there's an intent or an initiative in that year to address that one, and then we drop it down when we need.
Especially because I will say that we as a council have been urging staff to work on our budget earlier and earlier, and you are. I find every year I've been on council that our budget is getting done a month or more earlier than it was the previous year. So we're truly making progress, and now we're starting to work on it already, or all of you are starting to work on it already, which means the year isn't done either, right? That makes budgeting a little more challenging for sure, because we don't have a solid 12 months to look back at. So we're relying on even prior years. The department heads have to really look at what's taking place in their departments. Yeah, what are the anomalies? What are the one-offs? what is different that was never the same? And it does become more challenging. And yeah, the question always is, you know, what are we learning from this process each time? Is it making us better? Anyway, I don't know if there is an answer to that other than, you know, we keep trying, right? Member DeMare, go ahead.
Chair, that was a good thought aspect, because we just looked at our auditor's report, and they had a 5-year analysis, and we saw 5 years how things went. And that goes, okay, you can see some trends going on here, right? So if you look at all these individual budget groups, and you did analysis over a 5-year period, not the average, but the analysis, and did even if you charted it using a graph to see what it is, and you'd see some anomalies or you'd see trends, and then you'd have an understanding where this is taken as sort of the 5-year period. Because when I looked at that 5-year, I thought, well, there's a trend. It's changing. So the point is, and you might pick up some analysis on a graph that says, there's a problem here, and what it is, and you certainly probably would know that, but year to year, but on a 5-year analysis, it really starts to stand out. And I just wondered if that is capable to be done, because you may not have the 5-year in your data there, but you'd have to pull it together. And it's not a subjection for AI, pull it all together. So, a good idea.
And I think the challenge that we're also moving to is to try and do 5-year forecasting. And, Mr. Delmonico and I have talked about this many a time about, trying to forecast out a number of years so that you can see the impact that your decisions today will have on the budget of the future as well. And I mean, wouldn't it be great if our crystal ball could be so sharp that we could project out 10 years even? But it gets a little foggy the farther we get out. Life becomes a little more iffy as to how it's going to turn out, what our constraints will be, what our goals will be at that time. But yeah, certainly our staff, even through the budgeting process, are trying to take it out a few years as well so that we learn from history, but we also use that information to help us project out where we're going to be as well. And we keep fine-tuning it in that process. But I agree with you. I really like the 5-year analysis and some of those extra things that were built into our reports this time. Thank you. I want to just kind of leave one last thought on the table. Always in the past, after all the financial statements have been issued in final, we have always posted them to our website so that, the consolidated Niagara Power, Grimsby Power, Library, Art Gallery, anything that was audited or reviewed will ultimately, once it's finally and fully approved, will be put on our website. But some of the reports that we've received tonight with that 5-year historical picture and things like that are really helpful, I find, especially for those who aren't used to looking at a lot of numbers. The reports that have been drafted by our staff that talk about why things change from budget, where the trends are, what happened. I find that so extremely useful, and numbers speak to me, but they don't speak to all of us the same way. And so words go a long ways to helping explain it. And Mr. Delmonico and I were kind of kicking around like, would it be possible to perhaps on our website even put a link to this evening's report so that, people hopefully would go and look at the numbers, but if they say, oh my goodness, these numbers are too much, I don't understand them, we could supply a link to the written report that would go with it so people could at least go there to read it in words as to what has happened. So I do leave that thought with our staff as to, a great report and really would like to see it accompany our numbers. Then that actually covers everything on our agenda. We have not had. We do need to vote on this last one, absolutely, thank you. So the resolution is resolved that Finance Report 25-39, the 2025 first-term financial update, which is dated July 24th, 2025, be received for information. By show of hands, all those in favor, please. And that is carried. Tonight on item number 9, we have no correspondence, so that's, I'm just going to call my computer version up here. Number 10, any other business? Member Thompson.
Through you, Director. As a member, I just truly want to thank the Director and his team, Angela, on that. I think the last 2 years, seeing from one auditor now to this KPMG who's just world-renowned, I think it's amazing. I think you've done a fabulous job, and as a member of, and representing the residents of Grimsby, great job to all of you.
We definitely second that from all the committee members. Thank you. It's always challenging, too, in the year when you switch auditors, because the auditors have to redocument, processes and things like that. And so they come to our staff and they have to, it's an extra step. Whereas in future years, they'll be updating what they have already documented. So we'll start to make life a little easier. But the year of a change is always more work, both from the perspective of the external auditors as well as from the staff who are seeing new faces and have lost that continuity of the past. So thank you very much for all your efforts in that. Much appreciated. Then anyone else have any other business this evening? Any new business? Seeing none, then I would just like to formally offer congratulations on behalf of the Finance Committee to our clerk here who was married just in the last week or so. And congratulations on that step forward there on behalf of all of our committee members. Our next finance meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 28th at 6 p.m., just to remind everyone. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.